So I just wanted to share a little bit about Dzogchen in the Yangzheng Bon tradition. So I put together a little PowerPoint presentation. It's actually a lot simpler um, than what you see in the Enigma tradition, although there's going to be a lot to show here. Um, but hopefully this will help to simplify it and kind of paint a little picture of how everything fits together. So we begin with the Yangzheng Bon tradition with Buddha Tongpo Shenron. He was the founder of the Bon tradition, and he lived 18,000 years ago. There's a picture of him there on the screen, and he's just essentially an earlier Buddha than Shakyamuni. So Yungdrung means eternal, or unchanging, everlasting, and Bon means the way, reality, or the truth. In Sanskrit, Bon would translate to Dharma. And Yungdrung would translate in Sanskrit to swastika. So swastika dharma would be how you say it in Sanskrit. But Bon originated actually in Tagzig. And from there, it was transmitted and migrated to the nation of Zhangzhung. And then from there, Shangjung was eventually conquered by Tibet. And so it is a tradition or lineage that is non-Indian in origin. So most kind of Buddhist lineages trace their roots back to India. Bon is unique in that it traces its tradition back from Tibet to Shangjung, all the way back to Tagzig. And Bon has many different classifications, different ways you can discuss and organize the teachings. But one that's really familiar and useful for me is to break it up into three classifications of Sutra, Tantra, and Dzogchen. And we'll primarily be looking at Dzogchen in this presentation, but I just wanted to touch on all three. So we have the Sutra kind of path, which teaches the Bodhisattva path and the 10 perfections. They have a few more perfections, paramitas, than you traditionally see in the Indian Buddhism. But the six are still in there with the 10. They just have a few additions. And we have the Tantra path or mantra. And this is the path of transformation. So here we're transforming unwholesome emotions into wisdom by Buddhists. And this has subdivisions of like Father Tantra and Mother Tantra, but we're not going to get into that at this time. And finally, with the Dzogchen classifications. And this is, the same as you'll see in the Indian schools. It's the direct mind perception path. So as we dive into Dzogchen, the Bon, it really has four different cycles, four different lineages or traditions or cycles, however you want to call it, that would make up what we call Dzogchen. At least four that are kind of still in existence today. And the first one is the acrid or a tree. And this means teachings leading to the primordial state, and it's a 11th century Terma cycle. Terma means rediscovered cycle. Then we have the Shengsheng Ninju, which means the oral tradition or the oral lineage from Songjung. And this is a Kama, or a direct transmission lineage going all the way back to the Buddha. So this one has been passed down from teacher to student all the way going back to the Buddha, very similar to how Zen or Chan has their lineage charts. then we have the big tree thassel, and this one is has two lineages within it, a male and a female lineage. And I've only studied the female lineage. I've only had the transmission of the female lineage, and we'll explore this one in some upcoming slides. And finally is Dzogchen, which is a little bit confusing because it's called Dzogchen and it's nested under Dzogchen, but it's really short for this Dzogchen Yangtze Longchen, which is a 8th century terma, again, a rediscovered cycle. And so when most people say Dzogchen at this level, they probably are referring to this specific cycle. It's a little bit confusing because Dzogchen has a more generic term which can refer to all of these, as well as Dzogchen in other traditions, like in Indian Buddhism. And I've never studied the Dzogchen Yangtze Longchen. So let's look at them one at a time. We'll look at the eight tree tradition. And so this is one of the most important traditions of Bon, and it guides the practitioner through 15 step-by-step sessions to stabilize realization and awaken awareness of our primordial nature. So originally, these teachings were based on the Chempo, Myorito Chempo, in the 11th century. And then over time, over hundreds of years, several great masters simplified them. So in their original form, there was 80 sessions. And then a master came along and kind of condensed and simplified them into 30 sessions. And then later, another master came and condensed those 30 sessions into the 15 sessions that we have today. And this cycle presents an approach to Dzogchen practice that kind of begins with practices of disciplining the mind, and then stabilizing the mind through meditation, continues with direct introduction to the natural state, and then it goes into practices for sustaining the natural state. And so just a quick summary without going into too much detail. So the first 4 sessions are to ripen the unripened mind stream. And if you're familiar with the extraordinary preliminary practices, Nundro, these might seem very familiar. So kind of session 1 is kind of the common Nundro, reflections on impermanence. And then we move into the extraordinary, bodhicitta, refuge, confession, mandala offering, and finally Guru Yoga. And you can see these sessions are really great in that they provide specific practices to do. They tell you how to position the body, how to position the gaze, how to position your mind, what specifically to say and do, and then for how long. So you can kind of see, kind of week retreat on reflecting on impermanence as you go through. And then session 5 through 10 are kind of the main practices of Dzogchen. And this includes Shine, or Shamatha, what we might call pebble meditation, both with an object and then removing the pebble, doing Shine without an object, space gazing practices. We also get into some vase breathing, which is a Tumo type of practice. And then it gets into traditional Dzogchen, pointing out the nature of mind, and then resting in that. And then finally, sessions 11 through 15 are concluding practices of the fruition. They deal with kind of stabilizing and more advanced practices of liberation and complete Buddhahood, which I won't go into now, but it's kind of a 3-part system, kind of Nundro, main practice, and then kind of fruition. So that's the 8-tree cycle. I really love this one for people that are starting out with Dzogchen. In the Bon tradition, this was the first lineage, the first cycle that I was taught in Dzogchen. That was transmitted to me, and I really liked it because it was very practice oriented. It didn't focus a lot on the philosophy. It didn't focus a lot on the logic of it. It was very much like, go out, do this practice, um, and wait for the results. So I highly recommend it, especially for people interested in getting into Bon Dzogchen. The next cycle I'd like to talk about is the female lineage. So the female lineage there's a lineage tree here. You can see they're all listed. And these are 30 chondros or dakinis. Chondro is Tibetan for dakini. Dakini is a Sanskrit word. And these are 30 great women in this lineage that are all Dzogchen practitioners who became Dzogchen masters, one after another. And they transmitted the teachings, handing them down from one woman to the next. And all these women come from all over the world. When we read the lineage tree, we see that they are from China, Tibet, India, Central Asia, just all over the world. And they all received these authentic teachings handed down, practiced them, and each woman in the lineage achieved rainbow body or passing on the teaching, and then passed on the teachings to the next one. It's still Dzogchen, so it deals with realizing the natural state. And the practices included in this cycle are Guru Yoga, reflections on the lineage supplication, and your traditional Dzogchen meditation, natural state. As for the male lineage, I have not studied or experienced that, so I know it exists, but I don't have anything to comment on. And kind of the heart of the Bon tradition, kind of the flagship or the main core, is the Zhengzhung Ninju, or the oral tradition from Zhengzhung. Ninju means oral transmission, and this is the subdivision of the root texts that have been passed down unchanged from teacher to student, called the Kagyu Korzi. And sometimes we call this the upper lineage, in comparison to the lower lineage, which is the Namju, which means the experiential transmission. An experiential transmission is all the commentaries and the enlightened experiences of all the enlightened masters of the Zhengzhung Ninju lineage. So we have the root texts themselves that have been passed down from teacher to student, and then we have kind of the enlightened experience and the commentaries on the root texts and practice by all the great masters. Important figures here are Kuntu Zangpo, the Dharmakaya Buddha, and Taparista, who picture of right there. He's from the 8th century. And if we explore kind of the root text, that upper division of the Ninju, it's divided into 4 cycles, the outer, inner, secret, and innermost secret. And essentially there's kind of a root text for each of these cycles. So for the outer, which kind of deals with the philosophy of the view, really dealing with which is setting up what is the Dzogchen view. And the root text there is called 12 Little Sun Tantras. At the inner level is a text called the 6 Lamps. At the secret level, we have a text called Precepts in 8 Chapters. And at the innermost secret level, we have the 21 Seals, The 21 Nails, it's often called 21 Nails. And this is kind of the core pinnacle flagship text of the Shengsheng Ninju, which is kind of the main core flagship of Bon Dzogchen. So the 21 Nails, uh, taught by Taparista over on the left, as well as the Six Lamps, which was taught by Taparista um, on the left as well. And yeah, both the Six Lamps and the 21 Seals are the teachings that have been transmitted and handed down to me, and the texts that I work with and practice. And then this experiential transmission, there's many, many texts and commentaries, like I said, of the great masters. And I'm really only going to touch on one that's been transmitted to me, which is Heart Drops of Kunto Zongpo. And this was written by Sharda Rinpoche, who, if you notice, um, oh, it should be 1859 to 1933. So he was born in 1859. Very, very modern comparatively when you look at the history of Bonn. There's an image of him there. So this is a much more contemporary type. I mean, he passed on not even quite 100 years ago yet. And so this text is a pith direct method of Dzogchen, and it's focused on practice. It basically takes you through exactly how to practice. It's not a philosophy text. It's not concerned with elaborating on the Dzogchen view. And it really encompasses 4 different sections. It's made in 4 chapters. The first deals with the Rushens, preliminary practices of Dzogchen. And it goes into Dzogchen meditation, the Chakcho meditation and the Togao meditation. And the 4th section deals with Bardo meditation, Bardo teachings and practices. Sharda, being a kind of more modern contemporary, he taught and learned from both Bon and Buddhist masters. There was a lot of cross-pollination at this time. The Rime movement during this time was in full form, and so he really just learned from anybody he could get his hands on, and he taught anybody that was willing to listen. And so his teachings in this text are very, very similar to the Nyingma Dzogchen practices. So if you've practiced some of the Rushens or some of these practices in Nyingma Buddhism, they are like almost word for word identical. And again, it's a very modern text compared to many of the others that are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years old. And so, yeah, this is kind of the context. There's these 4 Dzogchen traditions, kind of have their own flavor, their own style. That's been what I've been studying, what's been transmitted to me over the past few years. And, hopefully this helps. It probably introduces a lot more new names and concepts and classifications. But at the end of the day, you just kind of, you learn whichever one your teacher is teaching you. You study it, you read the texts, you reflect on the teachings, and you try your best to just put it into practice. And slowly by slowly, you gain kind of proficiency, gain realization, hopefully, and then maybe your teacher will move on to another cycle or lineage or text. So thank you for taking the time to listen. I bow to you all.